Hello and welcome again to the Writer Review. This is Eric Hirot, writer, and this week we're going to be going way back in time. We're going to be doing a classic movie. We're going way back in time. I'm talking about 1957. That's right. This week's movie is going to be The Bridge on the River Kwai. Now, The Bridge on the River Kwai is an epic war film that runs for 2 hours and 41 minutes long. It is directed by David Lean. It is produced by Sam Spiegel. The script was written by a couple of screenwriters who were blacklisted at one time. We're talking about Carl Foreman and Michael Wilson. Now, this movie was actually based off of a novel called The Bridge on the River Kwai, and it was done by French author Pierre Boulle. The score was done by Malcolm Arnold, the cinematography by Jack Hildyard. Thank you, Rosalind. And it was edited by Peter Taylor. And no, not the late Peter Taylor from here, just somebody who also just ironically has the same name, Peter Taylor. That's off to you. Okay, the stars of the movie are William Holden, Alec Guinness, who of course you may probably know as Obi-Wan Kenobi from the original Star Wars series back in the 70s and 80s. We also have Jack Hawkins, Sessue Hayakawa. We have James Donald, Geoffrey Horne. No, he's not from Ganawage, just another actor who just ironically is named Geoffrey Horne. So, yeah, there's a Geoffrey Horne. Andre Morrell. We have John Boxer, Percy Herbert, Harold Goodwin, and Henry Okawa. Now, in the golden age of cinema, David Lean was dubbed as the king of the epics. I mean, he also directed such great classics. One of my personal favorites, which stars the late great Peter O'Toole, Lawrence of Arabia. Yes, that's right. David Lean is definitely the master when it came to epic films. I guess today you would probably say Peter Jackson could be the king of epics. But back in the 50s, it was Lean all the way. Okay, one of his more prolific movies that fall into that category is The Bridge on the River Kwai. To me, the top priority of this movie wasn't emphasized on World War II, even though the setting was during World War II. Okay, the film centers around a strict but well-defined British officer, Lieutenant Colonel Nicholson, played by Alec Guinness, and a lesser disciplined American soldier named Commander Shears, played by William Holden, and a tyrant prison officer, Colonel Saito, played by Sessue Hayakawa, who are placed in a Japanese prison camp where they were forced into labor to build a railway bridge over the River Kwai that connects from Bangkok and Rangoon. While this is done, these three individuals try everything to coexist with one another. Okay, first of all, in the case of Nicholson and Saito, there's been a bit of a conflict. You see, according to the Geneva reports, yes, some of these British prisoners of war, POWs, were put into this Japanese prison camp. Some of these soldiers were officers. And according to some kind of Geneva account, it's been said that officers are not eligible to perform this construction of a bridge. But because Saito is facing deadlines and also has a lot of things in the balance, including facing the deadline and his desperate need to hire soldiers to work on the bridge. He's running out of time, and he is definitely does not really care about protocol or anything of that sort. His determination is to build this bridge, and he has a deadline for that. So while this is done, these individuals try everything to coexist with one another. You see very little of the war. The abysmal conditions of the prison camp is definitely hard to swallow, and the cruelty that comes with the package might be not necessarily for the faint of heart. Now, this is where the best scenes take place, especially those who are into character-driven movies. This is where the performers truly exhibit themselves so that they could get Oscar recognition. And boy, did they ever. I mean, I think this movie actually had something like 9 or 10 Oscar wins. And they also had one other nominee who did not win an Oscar, but hey, a nominee is better than getting a kick in the ass now, is it? I would say. Okay, and the harsher the conditions, the better. Like a blessing in disguise for the viewers. This movie is definitely hard to watch at times. If you're kind of like into, like I said, this is another war-themed movie. So if you're kind of into like movies that deal with, you know, bloodshot, or carnage, or graphic violence and stuff like that, you might be a little disappointed because of the fact that you don't see very much of that. There's not going to be excessive violence. Besides that, it's not taking place in Europe this time. We're in Japan. And the Japanese were just as very much important characters in World War II, just as much as, you know, the European countries, Germany, etc. So yes, you are definitely going to see a lot of tension. You're going to see a lot of conflict. You're not going to see excessive violence, but you are going to see a lot of character-driven stuff. You're going to see a lot of politics in this movie. And it's definitely more of a performance-themed movie than more action-packed. I mean, and basically the emphasis of this movie is to build a bridge on time so that a train could, you know, pass by. And they have a certain deadline to build this bridge. And, you know, this guy is under certain restrictions. I mean, he has to face a deadline, but also at the same time, he needs enough men to get this bridge built before it's too late. It's quite astounding that the characters definitely come to life as we are invested in the main 3 characters and a few supporting ones. It becomes more fascinating as they develop. I mean, this movie is definitely really well open for character development. I was very pleased that that many of these characters do not come across as stereotypical archetypes. I mean, they could have definitely would have made Hayakawa's character, Colonel Saito, I mean, into actually, believe it or not, he might be a little bit of a tyrant to some, but in the same time, Saito definitely actually is one of these tyrannical characters that you can actually get invested in terms of sympathy. I mean, yes, I mean, he's under a lot of stress. He's under a lot of tension. And, you know, I don't envy his predicament. I truly don't envy his predicament, and I'm kind of glad they actually made him into a well-structured character. A lesser-made film would have dismissed him as a one-dimensional cartoon character villain. But he's not really looked upon as a villain. He actually has development. We kind of know a little bit of his backstory. We kind of understand what he's going through and the pressure that he's being put in. Lieutenant Colonel Nicholson is a dedicated officer who's definitely by the book persona, gives him the edge of a true leader in his world. I mean, he tells Saito that no, officers are not eligible in building of this bridge. Only the enlisted are. But then, as time goes on, and Saito finally gives in by saying, okay, fine, officers are not going to be permitted, are going to be excused from building the bridge, and only just the enlisted men and the prisoners are going to build the bridge. But then when Nicholson notices that that the Japanese are using pretty much archaic technological stuff, then all of a sudden Nicholson decides to go against protocol and decides that maybe they should, go right ahead and start building the bridge. In some ways, this could be built as kind of a little bit offensive and maybe even to some extent, maybe even borderline racist. Why do I say racist? Because once again, it's Western civilization trying to upstage and usurp Eastern civilizations. Oh, Western civilizations has more technological advancements and Eastern civilization has nothing but archaic stuff that, of course, they feel that, hey, the Western civilization could build a better bridge. So then again, this is just an epic clash between the Western civilization trying to outsmart the Eastern civilization. And this definitely caused a little bit of some oppositions with Japanese critics who definitely panned this movie as being, once again, having the Western civilization getting the upper hand, when that is all totally untrue. I think the Eastern civilization had just as much, maybe even more superior technological advancements than the Western civilization. But then again, this is just, the thing that happened within the Hollywood machine. And, in some ways, I'm not going to be on disagreeing terms. Maybe that's kind of like just how that movie went. It's kind of like that. I'm not pounding on anybody or anything in this. I'm just being neutral here, trying to do everything I can to remain as unpartisan in these accounts. This is just observation that I'm doing. I'm not picking sides here or anything like that. But yeah, this is kind of like what the gist of this movie is, and this is where all the friction that had happened within this movie, and the aftermath and the reactions. Okay. And the thing is, but let's go back a little bit to Lieutenant Colonel Nicholson. Yes, I definitely do think that this guy truly has this strong leadership within him, and he will not budge until Saito shows more respect towards the Geneva Convention, in which officers are forbidden to manual labor, in spite of his orders that prisoners, regardless of rank, must build this bridge. But when Saito takes the request into consideration, or else face, like I said, when I mentioned before that Saito has a lot on his hands, if he does not obey protocol, chances are he is going to be facing a dire situation known as ritual suicide. How's that for stress, huh? Ritual suicide. I don't envy you. Whatever that is, I don't envy you. Nicholson definitely goes through great lengths to humiliate the Japanese by upstaging and promoting how great the British Army is by building a better bridge. It's one of those, anything the Eastern civilization can do, the Western civilization can do better. And once again, biased, one-sided, borderline racist. Need I say more? Let's go on. So, in spite of how proud and dedicated he is to the British Army, in the end, Nicholson is definitely far from perfect. I mean, he disobeys his own laws. I mean, he decides that, hey, one minute he's like a buy the book kind of guy, and next minute he says, oh, fuck the book. Blow your nose with it. We're going to build a better bridge. Regardless of this whole Geneva Convention thing. In fact, his flaws are definitely quite obvious. His role becomes that of a tragic hero in which even the good guys can get their comeuppance. Yes. I mean, sometimes not all movies have to always end with the good guys coming up winners. Sometimes bad guys can win. This is not a Disney movie where the good guys always come out on top. This is a war epic movie. And in some ways, I always sometimes think that in epic movies, nobody comes out the winner. No matter what. Regardless of what situation. His character blunder comes from the issue he was fighting against upon taking over his life, as his building of the monument becomes all that matters to him, and what the purpose as to why this bridge is being constructed. But what makes now aside from the whole squabble and the whole conflicts and the whole conflicts within oneself, I don't really talk too much about Commander Shears. I mean, Commander Shears was I think he kind of escaped Japanese prison camp and was hiding out in the country of Ceylon, which of course Ceylon today is now known as Sri Lanka. He's hiding out in Ceylon, and then all of a sudden he gets a visit from a rival British army camp, and their mission is to blow up this bridge that Nicholson and Saito are building. So there's a bit of a subplot, and there's also a bit of an added conflict to this movie. But I think it really, really does add up very, very well, and it adds up very, very effectively too, I might add. So there's really, really a lot at stake. There's a lot going on in this movie. It doesn't necessarily mean bloodshed, but there is a lot of stress. There's a lot of tension. It's very laborious to watch in its details. Some people who might complain that this movie is 2 hours and 41 minutes long. I mean, definitely not for children to watch. So that's out of the question. But it's a good movie to watch if you have like the time to sit down and watch this movie. You have to find the time to do it, and in order for me to watch this movie, I had to sort of find my time, when I'm not at work, to take the time to actually watch this movie. Because, hey, it's 2 hours and 40 minutes long. It's epic. So I kind of mostly have to sit through the weekend to do this. It's about maybe the only time I could really ever watch 2 hour and 40-minute long movies. Maybe I might go the week with watching maybe a 2 hour movie at the most, but 2 hours and 43 hour long movies, I kind of want to find the right time to do so. So best day for me to have watched this movie was last weekend. But I was satisfied with what I saw. And it's not because I'm being biased, because we're going back to the golden age of cinema, and as the old saying goes, all the old stuff is better than today's stuff. No, not necessarily. I've seen some old classic stuff that just don't measure up to some of the things that we see from today. Or, maybe many people just take things for granted, that everything old is better. Some are, not all, but some are. Bridge on the River Kwai works on various levels in terms of great pacing, remarkable characters, and a well put together plot. There is still a major flaw that holds this movie to actually being a masterpiece. In spite of all its awards and accolades, there is still a few red herrings that are swimming in the River Kwai. While doing everything in its power to make this war film not emphasizing too much on the war, the last 15 minutes ends up becoming all about the war and the preachy cliches that are about how bad war is. It's like, oh God, not again. Yes, war is bad. Yes, we've been told millions and millions of times that who wants to go to fucking war? Who wants to have your heads blown off? Who wants to watch that? We know. You don't have to tell us. Yes, war is bad. War is terrible. War is cruel. We've been preached to death about how bad war is. And yes, there really is no such thing as a war film, as a philosopher once told me. In fact, a philosopher once said there's actually more anti-war films than war. I mean, who wants to go to war? Who wants to wake up in the morning saying, oh, I'm so gung-ho, I'm going to go eat my breakfast, and I'm going to go head out to war. I'm going to go hop on a plane, grab a gun, and start shooting people. Oh boy, is this going to be fun. Not. No, but seriously, there's never going to be a pro-war film. All films seem to have anti-war sentiments. And as much as I agree entirely with their sentiments, it does not have to be dragged down into our faces. If they would have just stuck to the emphasis of either building a bridge, blowing up a bridge, derailing a train, and not us whole war is bad crap, this movie could have been a real instant classic. I'm not saying that it's terrible in any way, shape, or form. Far from it. In fact, I actually enjoyed this movie entirely for a lot of things. But it's just that one little nitpick that really kind of irked me a little. I mean, if they would have, kept up with the human drama, this movie could have been pure gold. I mean, not that it was in any way overrated or anything like that. The political sentiments just takes over in the end when the final quote, madness comes around after the chaos that has happened, and it definitely leaves a sour taste in your mouth. Yes, 1 minute you have this gung-ho, by-the-book colonel building a bridge, going up against his own jurisdiction, only just caving in to the colonel just to prove that the Western civilization is still better than Eastern civilization and that they could build a better bridge. And then you have some opposing rival rival squadron who wants to blow up the bridge, derail a train, and everything just comes into pure madness. I mean, as epical and as exciting as these last 15 minutes were, we just did not necessarily need the preach fest. Shame, really, you know. Up until then, I really was invested into this movie. Many reviewers have said that this movie has anti-war written all over the place, and that the after effects of the war can cause even the sanest individual traumatized. I mean, just look at this. Most war veterans who have came out of the war definitely do suffer from post-traumatic stress syndrome. I mean, think about who wants to be in a war when you're experiencing that? I mean, I don't envy these people. And it's not to say that I'm some kind of war snob and that I'm a chicken shit or anything like that. No, nothing like that at all. Far from it. But the thing is that, you know, being put in a war could result in one of two things. You can either come out a hero, you could come out a hero but broken, or you could come home in a box ready to be buried 6 feet under. War is not a game. Games are to have fun. Games are to have fun and then to come back later and try again for another game. This is war. War is not a game. When your life is dependent on this, it's not a game. When your life is on the line, it's not a fucking game. Okay? You're risking life and limb here. And this is no disrespect to the reviewers, but that is not the case. Up until the last 15 minutes, it's all about men getting out of their ways, fighting through hard times during very complicated situations. The war was used as a decoy to represent the setting of the film. The setting of this film was in 1943. And even if this film has anti-war themes stamped all over, they could have kept it more hidden than blurted out in the end, which was definitely a cop-out to a potentially reasonable ending. We didn't need to have this whole madness thing going, because we've been educated into what happens in war. There is no clear winner. There is no clear loser. There is no clear hero, and there is no clear villain. We may sometimes look at horrible, despicable people as villains in the war. I mean, like, take for example, sure, you could say things like Hitler and Stalin were evil, horrible people, and they were evil, horrible individuals. But what about all the other soldiers who had fought, who had killed, who had been killed, or who have killed back? When you think about them, they're not any better either. When you kill, you're not a good guy. When you do horrible, awful things, you are not a good guy. It's just sort of like trying to balance out who is the less of two evils. And sure, I'm not trying to sugarcoat Hitler or Stalin or anybody like that. But the thing of the matter is when you're in the war, the end result is you're no better than them. Sure, you're fighting for our people. Sure, you're fighting for your country. But in the end, what are you doing? You're killing. What's good about that? You're taking a life away, whether they deserved it or whether they didn't. Nobody comes out a winner in a war. Nobody comes out a hero or a villain. maybe for your country or for your patriotism and maybe your dedication for your country, maybe you might come out as a hero. But at what cost? I mean, to be in a war, you have to go out and kill. Or you watch people get killed. But in the end, where's the winner in that? I know I'm trying to, I kind of sound a little bit like a hypocrite because I'm starting to preach about anti-war. But when you think about it, war is not a pleasant place to be. Sure, I may be fixated on this flaw too much, but it's because definitely I cared so much about the movie, and director David Lean just got lazy in the end and just rushed off the ending too fast, making the ending way too inorganic. But you know what? In spite of this flaw, I gotta have to say Bridge on the River Kwai is definitely a remarkable movie to enjoy, and it still holds well as one of the best classic epic films with a great cinematic achievement in character-driven movies. In the end, you know, this movie is character-driven. I'm glad to see that none of these characters were one-dimensional, woody, caricatured, cartoony-type characters. They did not necessarily sugarcoat Western civilization, but at the same time, they didn't sugarcoat Eastern civilization either. So at least I'll say one thing. David Lean did kind of balance within that kind of parameter. And yeah, I may have been a little bit too hard about this whole anti-war thing and how it got all preachy and stuff like that, and how I've ratted on about how bad war is. I mean, yes, it is, and that there are no winners or losers or heroes and villains in there. In the end, we're all fighting, we're all killing, and we're all just showing just how brutal and ruthless human civilization can be. It's the truth. Nobody comes out on top. Not just do we have lives lost, but buildings destroyed, livelihood ending, heartbreak, deceit. What kind of life is that? This is just random food for thought. And if anybody wishes to disagree with me or has some other added input, you know, feel free. Feel free to talk it over. And, you know, as long as, you know, you respect my opinion, I'll try my best to respect yours. Like I do with all my reviews. I know the last couple of movie reviews that I've done have been a little bit more war-themed. The next movie review that I will be doing, I'm not going to go into any kind of war-themed stuff in the next one. I'm not going to go lighthearted, but I'm going to get out of the war zone. The next movie review I'm going to do is not going to be World War II themed. I promise you that. This is just some food for thought and something to just think about while you're pondering whether or not you want to see this movie or not. It's your choice, it's your freedom, it's your prerogative. This movie is definitely not for everyone. But, you know, when it comes to character-driven films, this really hit the spot here. So I guess this ends my writer review. Thank you all for listening in. If you wish to subscribe to my channel, please feel free to do so. If you wish to leave a comment, go right ahead. But just remember, be kind, be courteous, and don't be rude. And I will be back again with another movie review. So until next time, this is Eric Writer saying, keep watching those movies, and I'll see you around. Goodbye.